Welcome to another episode of Fame Factor. I'm your host, Sonia Lambert, and today we're diving deep into the extraordinary life of Pablo Picasso. Not just the household name, but the man, the revolutionary, the collaborator, and yes, even the controversial figure who changed art forever. Looking for a quick dive into the lives of famous people who made a huge cultural impact? Scoob is an AI-powered podcast platform that brings you bite-sized, binge-worthy podcasts to fuel your day. Download Scoob, your go-to podcast hub with over 100,000 minutes of premium content and a thriving community of 50,000 listeners across the U.S. Scoob's compact episodes deliver compelling stories whenever you want. Available now on the App Store and Play Store. Now, coming back to Pablo Picasso, let's start with a story that perfectly captures what mastery really means. Picture this. An elderly Pablo Picasso sits in a Spanish cafe, casually doodling on a used napkin. Not the precious, calculated strokes you might expect from a world-renowned master, but something relaxed, almost playful, like a teenager drawing crude images in a public bathroom. Except this was Picasso. So those doodles were likely brimming with cubist flair, mingled with coffee stains on that humble napkin. A woman nearby watches, mesmerized. As Picasso prepares to leave, crumpling the napkin to throw it away, she intervenes. "Wait, can I have that napkin? I'll pay you for it." "Sure," Picasso replies, $20,000. The woman is stunned. "What? It took you like 2 minutes to draw that?" And here comes the line that defines not just Picasso, but the very nature of mastery itself. "No, ma'am. It took me over 60 years to draw this." He pockets the napkin and walks away. This story isn't just about art. It's about the invisible architecture of expertise, the countless failures and small victories that build up to a moment of apparent effortlessness. It's about understanding that when you see someone excel at something, you're witnessing not just talent, but the accumulation of decades of struggle, experimentation, and yes, failure. And failure? That's where our real story begins, in the cobblestone streets of early 20th century Paris, where a young Spanish artist was about to fail, succeed, and ultimately revolutionize how we see the world. Let's rewind to the beginning of the 1900s. Pablo Picasso arrives in Paris, not yet the master of the napkin story, but a young, hungry artist drawn to the magnetic pull of Montmartre. This wasn't the touristy Montmartre you might know today. This was a neighborhood that still retained the soul of a genuine village, perched on its hill like a Bohemian fortress overlooking the rapidly modernizing city below. Montmartre had only recently been absorbed into Paris proper, when Baron Georges Haussmann embarked on his ambitious urban development projects in the mid-19th century. Before that transformation, it was primarily rural, though industrialization had brought urban poverty to its fringes. The area was famous for its gypsum quarries, the source of plaster of Paris, and when those quarries were abandoned, they left behind a landscape of disused mines that made the southern slope of the Montmartre hill dangerously unstable. But instability, as it turns out, was exactly what drew artists there. By the time Picasso arrived, Montmartre was a haven for artists and free spirits, a place that embodied uncertainty and improvisation, but also freedom and happiness. The lower boundaries buzzed with rowdy nightlife, brothels, cabarets like Le Chat Noir and Mirliton, and dance halls like the famous Moulin de la Galette and Moulin Rouge with their spirited can-can dancers. And Picasso? He was right in the thick of it, but not in the way you might expect. Here's where the story gets interesting, and a little dangerous. You see, Picasso carried a gun. Not just any gun, but a Browning revolver with a fascinating provenance. This firearm had once belonged to Alfred Jarry, the iconic French poet and playwright best known for his groundbreaking work Ubu Roi. Though Jarry and Picasso never actually met, Jarry was dying just as Picasso was making his mark. They shared mutual friends like Max Jacob and Guillaume Apollinaire, who likely passed the revolver to Picasso as a distinctive gift. Now, what did Picasso do with this rusty revolver? In true Bohemian fashion, he claimed he used it to fend off bores, idiots, or anyone who dared disparage Paul Cézanne, an artist he deeply admired. Anecdotes suggest he might have fired a few shots at the Lapin Agile cabaret in frustration over some Germans who persistently demanded he explain his artistic theories. The Lapin Agile. Now, that's a place with character. Picasso and his financially strapped friends couldn't afford to drink there initially. Instead, they haunted a grittier establishment called Les Zout at Place Ravignan, a dive bar that attracted a rough crowd but offered cheap beer. Displeased with its grimminess, Picasso and his friends took matters into their own hands, scrubbing, whitewashing, and decorating the walls with their murals. Picasso notably contributed The Temptations of St. Anthony, a theme that would fascinate him throughout his career. When Frédéric Gérard, a wandering fish vendor who owned Les Zout, left to manage the Lapin Agile in 1903, he took Picasso and his entourage with him. The Lapin Agile got its playful name after illustrator André Gilles crafted a sign depicting an agile rabbit springing from a pot. A clever play on words that stuck. It was here that Picasso painted Au Lapin Agile, bartering his artistic skills to pay off a debt by adorning one of the cabaret's walls. The painting captures a somber scene with Picasso as Harlequin, alongside Germaine Gargallo as Columbine, two figures gazing straight ahead, embodying an unsettling sense of isolation despite their proximity. This period was crucial for Picasso's development. He was absorbing not just the techniques of art, but the very culture of artistic struggle. The poverty, the camaraderie, the late nights filled with passionate discussions about art and life. All of this was shaping the artist who would later command $20,000 for a napkin sketch. But Montmartre was just the beginning. Picasso was about to embark on the most revolutionary artistic partnership of the 20th century, one that would literally reshape how humans perceive reality itself. Every revolutionary needs a co-conspirator, and Picasso found his in Georges Braque, a French artist who would become his partner in what might be the most intense artistic collaboration in history. Picture this: the Montparnasse area of Paris in the early 1900s, a hub for struggling artists where Picasso and Braque first encountered each other. Despite their different national origins, one Spanish, one French, they discovered they shared something deeper, a mutual energy, an inspiration that would ultimately revolutionize the art world. Braque later described their relationship perfectly. "We were like two mountaineers roped together," and the synchronicity was remarkable. If one incorporated sand for texture into his work, the other would do the same. When stenciled commercial lettering appeared in Picasso's creations, it simultaneously emerged in Braque's. They shared not only styles and techniques, but seemingly the same palette and perspectives, achieving what can only be described as a profound, almost mystical union. Their meeting ground was the vibrant streets of Paris itself. They spent countless hours in discussions, convening at local cafes, bistros, and tobacco shops, observing the vibrant colors, the people, and the evolving societal dynamics of their time. Picasso was so impressed with Braque that he gave him the nickname Wilbur, after Wilbur Wright, one of the inventors of the airplane. For Picasso, this was the highest praise imaginable. But what were they really doing during those long conversations? They were witnessing nothing less than the birth of the modern world. Immersed in the dynamic urban milieu of Paris, Picasso perceived a critical societal transformation, from the relative tranquility of the mid-19th century to the fervor of modern life. The world was fragmenting, accelerating, becoming something entirely new. They recognized they were witnessing the advent of a new era, and they were determined to mirror this change through their art. Think about it. The previously favored pastel colors of the Impressionists were replaced by the muted gray-brown palette of their urban surroundings, a reflection of a world comprised of cobblestones and smoke-filled bars. Their artwork transitioned from soft, elementary landscapes and still lifes emphasizing depth, light, and shading to multifaceted images characterized by overlapping impressions and flat planes. This evolution looked almost as though their artwork was cut and rearranged, which wasn't accidental. It was their way of depicting how modern society was fragmenting the traditions of the previous century. The world was becoming Cubist before Cubism even had a name. By 1910 and 1911, when the initial Cubist paintings emerged from their studios, something extraordinary had happened. The works were so strikingly similar that art museums today often display them side by side, and without signatures, distinguishing the creator is nearly impossible. Art historians Sam Hunter and John Jacobus noted in their book Modern Art that the collaboration between Picasso and Braque was so intertwined that the origin of individual contributions to Cubism often remained undecipherable. They had ready access to each other's studios and works in progress, continually pushing the boundaries of their artistic endeavors. Ideas and perspectives flowed freely between them. But here's where it gets psychologically fascinating. Beneath this profound collaboration lay a sense of rivalry, particularly with Picasso, who harbored a deep-seated competitiveness. While both thrived in this competitive atmosphere, Picasso quickly ascended to greater fame, initially surpassing Braque, who had actually been the more established artist early on. But rather than destroying their partnership, this rivalry seemed to fuel it. They were pushing each other towards something neither could have achieved alone. What they created together wasn't just a new style of painting, it was a new way of seeing reality itself. They were literally teaching the human eye to perceive multiple perspectives simultaneously, to see around corners, to understand that truth might be fragmented, complex, and beautiful in its very brokenness. Their shared journey serves as an exemplary model for any field, fostering individual creativity and drive toward a common, invigorating objective. They proved that the greatest innovations often emerge not from solitary genius, but from the electric tension between minds pushing each other toward the impossible. But Cubism was just the beginning of Picasso's influence. He was about to discover that his revolutionary vision could reach far beyond the walls of Parisian galleries. Here's something most people don't know about Picasso. He created 2,400 prints over his lifetime. Not paintings, prints. When he died in 1973, they found a plethora of undiscovered plates and proofs in his studio, testament to just how prolific he was in this medium that most people barely associate with him. But why prints? Why would the master of modern painting invest so heavily in what might seem like a secondary medium? The answer reveals Picasso's genius extended far beyond artistic innovation. He understood the power of democratizing art. Like Albrecht Dürer centuries before him, Picasso recognized the immense capacity of paper to disseminate artistic works to a wider audience. Think about it. A painting can hang in one gallery, be seen by thousands. But a print? A print could be in thousands of homes, creating thousands of personal encounters with revolutionary art. Picasso ventured into printmaking around 1904 to 1905 with a series of etchings portraying acrobats and saltimbanques, initially hoping to sell them for financial gain. These early prints didn't achieve commercial success, but they mark the beginning of something much larger. Recognizing the artistic potential of this medium, he invested in a small printing press for his studio by 1907. The real revelation came when Picasso discovered he could leverage printmaking for political activism. During the Spanish Civil War, he used his prints to support the Spanish Republic. In 1937, during the Paris World's Fair, he released an edition of 850 copies of a portfolio containing two prints and his own poem labeled Sueño y Mentira de Franco, The Dream and Lie of Franco. This effort was perfectly aligned with the creation of his most famous political work, Guernica. Suddenly, Picasso's revolutionary vision wasn't confined to gallery walls. It was in the hands of ordinary people, spreading through Europe like artistic wildfire. His printmaking evolved with his art. In the 1930s, as he delved into sculpture, he produced a series of 40 etchings mirroring his sculptural themes. But here's the brilliant part. Unlike sculptures, which had limited appeal due to cost, etchings could be sold to a broader audience. Art for the people, revolution for the masses. By the 1950s, Picasso was pioneering the use of linoleum cuts, which resembled wood but were more pliable and receptive to ink. Initially used for posters, these evolved into significant artworks. He was constantly innovating, constantly finding new ways to push boundaries. The choice of paper itself became part of the artistic statement. During his and Braque's Cubism experimentation, they preferred laid paper for its wire lines, which complemented their geometric aesthetic. Meanwhile, Fernand Léger favored vanilla-colored wove paper for his endeavors. Even in the details, these artists were making deliberate choices about how their revolutionary vision would be experienced. Daniel Henry Kahnweiler, Picasso's dealer, was particularly keen on seeing books featuring art by significant artists rather than traditional illustrators. This wasn't just about commerce. It was about elevating the role of the artist in society, about making art an integral part of intellectual and cultural life rather than mere decoration. But here's what's really fascinating. Picasso's prints reveal something profound about his character. While his paintings often commanded enormous sums and hung in prestigious galleries, his prints were accessible. They were his way of ensuring that his revolutionary vision could reach beyond the wealthy collectors and art world elites. This wasn't just artistic democracy, it was artistic revolution made manifest. Every print was a seed of visual revolution planted in homes, schools, and public spaces around the world. Picasso understood something that many artists miss. True revolution isn't about shocking the art world. It's about changing how ordinary people see the world. And nowhere would this understanding be more powerfully demonstrated than in his response to one of the most horrific events of the 20th century, when Picasso would create what many consider his masterpiece, a work that would connect ancient Spanish identity with modern mechanized violence in ways that still resonate today. While Picasso was revolutionizing art with Braque, his personal life was undergoing its own dramatic transformation. The shift from Montmartre to Montparnasse wasn't just geographical. It represented a complete evolution in his identity as both artist and man. Montparnasse was calling to him with its own unique energy. This vibrant artistic and cultural hub offered something different from the village-like intimacy of Montmartre. Here, at cafes like the Closerie des Lilas, positioned perfectly at the intersection of Boulevard du Montparnasse and Boulevard Saint-Michel, Picasso found himself at the center of a more international, more sophisticated artistic scene. By 1905, the Closerie des Lilas had become the epicenter for weekly poetry readings, attracting notable figures like Picasso, André Salmon, and Guillaume Apollinaire. Fernand Olivier, Picasso's companion at the time, fondly recalled their walks across Paris from Montmartre to attend these spirited evenings that concluded only when the café closed its doors. The area was transforming rapidly. Improvements in transportation, notably the completion of the metro's Nord-Sud line and the extension of Boulevard Raspail, made it more accessible than ever. This accessibility transformed the Carrefour Vavin into a bustling international hotspot. Artists and intellectuals from various countries gathered at establishments like the Café du Dôme, which attracted Germans, Scandinavians, and Americans, and the newly expanded Café de la Rotonde, which welcomed a diverse mix of artists, poets, and writers who mingled regardless of nationality or artistic style. These weren't just social venues. They were sanctuaries for impoverished artists and writers. André Salmon observed that creative individuals could spend hours in these cafes, engaged in discussions, and immersed in the warmth of good company, all for the price of a simple café crème. That single purchase seemingly granted them the right to linger and participate in this international cultural exchange. But despite his growing affinity for Montparnasse, Picasso wasn't ready to completely abandon Montmartre. He maintained his apartment and even rented another studio at the Bateau Lavoir, hedging his bets, keeping his options open. This decision would prove prescient in ways he couldn't have imagined. It was during this transitional period that one of the most telling anecdotes of his personal life unfolded. Gertrude Stein and Alice B. Toklas visited his studio early in 1912 when Picasso was away, leaving a calling card. Later, they discovered that Picasso had incorporated their calling card into one of his paintings, The Architect's Table, inscribed with the phrase "Ma Jolie," a reference to a popular song of the time. But "Ma Jolie" meant more than just a catchy tune. It was about to become the soundtrack to a romantic revolution that would parallel his artistic one. Fernande Olivier, with her charm and flirtatious nature, had begun an affair with the Italian painter Ubaldo Opie in the autumn of 1911. Feeling guilty, or perhaps seeking to complicate matters further, she enlisted her friend Yves Gouel, the partner of Picasso's acquaintance Louis Marcuse, as an intermediary to help manage the situation. This decision spectacularly backfired when Yves developed a more intimate relationship with Picasso himself. The student became the master, the intermediary became the prize. Picasso left Fernande for Yves, whom he affectionately called Eva, and suddenly, Ma Jolie took on new meaning. It wasn't just a song reference anymore, it was a love letter painted into Cubist masterpieces. The phrase "Ma Jolie" began appearing in Picasso's works as a tribute to his new muse. With Fernande's infidelity providing justification for a clean break, Picasso moved on with Eva, relocating first to French Catalonia, then Avignon, before finally returning to Paris. But this time, he chose to reside in Montparnasse, a geographical shift that signaled both emotional and artistic transformation. This move represented more than a change of address. In Montmartre, Picasso had been a struggling Bohemian artist, living on the margins, fighting for recognition. In Montparnasse, he was becoming an established figure, someone whose work was being sought after, whose opinions mattered, whose love letters could be written in revolutionary artistic language that the world was beginning to understand. The transition from Fernande to Eva wasn't just personal, it was artistic. Fernanda represented the early, struggling Picasso of Montmartre. Eva represented the mature, confident Picasso of Montparnasse. And Ma Jolie represented something new in his work, the integration of personal emotion with artistic revolution. But even as Picasso was finding love and success in Montparnasse, events in his homeland were about to call him to create what many consider his greatest work. A piece that would connect his artistic innovations with the political realities of a world tearing itself apart. On April 26, 1937, the world changed in a small Basque town called Guernica. German incendiaries devastated this thriving township in Spain, and the echo of that destruction would resonate through art history in ways that still give us chills today. Picasso's response was Guernica, a sprawling 23-foot masterpiece that stands as perhaps the most powerful anti-war painting ever created. But this wasn't just a painting about war. It was something far more profound, a work that connected ancient Spanish identity with modern mechanized violence, that used the fragmented language of Cubism to express the fragmented reality of modern warfare. When Guernica was first displayed in Paris, it was positioned behind a working fountain of red mercury. Imagine the symbolism, the visceral impact of that presentation. The painting, imbued with the grim palette of newsprint tones and characterized by clashing jagged lines and forms, presented something entirely unprecedented to viewers. Gentlemen and elaborately dressed ladies who could scarcely have foreseen such an impactful transformation of traditional art forms. What made Guernica groundbreaking wasn't just its artistic technique, it was its revolutionary focus. Previous war artists like Otto Dix and Georges Braque had concentrated on battlefield carnage, on soldiers and military landscapes. But Picasso's genius was to focus on the civilian cost of modern warfare. women, children, and animals torn apart by explosives. This was warfare brought home. Warfare that recognizes no boundaries between military and civilian targets. The piece became the quintessential subject for Cubism, channeling Picasso's penchant for fractured imagery to depict the literally fragmented human condition. Its ghastly grayness hangs oppressively like a tremendous bruise, a potent symbol for an era marked by shattered glass, aerial bombardments, and arbitrary violence, an era that, disturbingly, sounds familiar to our own contemporary condition. But let's focus on the two figures that dominate this apocalyptic scene: a horse and a bull. These aren't just animals caught in crossfire. They're the key to understanding everything Picasso was trying to say about Spain, about violence, about the eternal versus the temporal. The horse, impaled and screaming, exudes primal anguish at its imminent death. Every line in its body speaks of pain, of violation, of innocence destroyed. The bull, in stark contrast, is a static presence beneath a glowing bulb, with its resilient horns protruding from its lopsided head. This bull seems untouched by the devastation around it, perhaps even having played a role in the suffering. Note how the horse appears to have been gored. In a 1944 interview, Picasso offered some clarification about these symbols: the bull as an embodiment of oppressive forces, the horse as the Spanish populace. But at other times, he would dispel attempts at oversimplification, insisting irately that the bull is a bull and the horse is a horse, indicating their role as mere animals caught in massacre. But here's where it gets fascinating. Picasso was being deliberately evasive. The bull isn't just a bull, and he knew it. This creature carries the weight of centuries of Spanish identity, of myth, of primal power that transcends simple political symbolism. To understand Picasso's bull, you have to understand Spain itself. In the picturesque terrain near Seville, under ancient trees and among quaint villages, stands Las Mojadillas farm, a testament to Spanish tradition where men like Pedro Trapoti continue a lineage of breeding fighting bulls. Trapot, in his contemporary attire of flannel shirts, denim cigars, and cell phones, embodies the Spanish gentleman farmer, continuing traditions with historical overtones reminiscent of amphitheaters and rancherinas. The bull in Guernica represents this intersection of ancient and modern Spain. It's both archaic and contemporary, inhabiting historical landscapes and modern feedlots simultaneously. Its corporeal form articulates a bygone epoch of unspoiled atmosphere and natural growth, while existing within the mechanized violence of modern warfare. Picasso had long been fascinated by the Minotaur, a creature combining human and bull forms that featured prominently in his works as a dark, psychologically complex force. These depictions appeared recurrently in bacchanalian festivities, ominously threatening women, or subdued by a child's fragile light. The Minotaur represented something primal, something that couldn't be civilized away. In Guernica, this fascination reaches its culmination. The bull becomes an allegory for timelessness itself, harking back to an era preceding civilization's construction. Under the stark brilliance of electric light, the work reveals an ancient entity that defies simple moral categories. It's a manifestation of danger that remains eternal amid temporal destruction. This is why Guernica continues to resonate. It's not just about the Spanish Civil War, not just about fascism or bombing campaigns. It's about the collision between eternal, primal forces and modern technological violence. It's about how ancient truths persist, even as civilizations tear themselves apart. The painting asks us, in a world where German bombers can destroy ancient towns in hours, what remains constant? What survives? And Picasso's answer, embodied in that eternal watching bull, is both terrifying and profound. The capacity for both creation and destruction that lies at the heart of human nature itself. Guernica transformed Picasso from a revolutionary artist into something more: a witness to history, a translator of human suffering, a bridge between the ancient and the modern. It was his napkin sketch writ large, not just a demonstration of technical mastery, but the culmination of everything he had learned about seeing, about truth, about the responsibility of the artist to bear witness to their time. But as we'll see, this masterpiece also marks the beginning of a debate that continues to this day. What makes art truly valuable? Is it market price, historical significance, or something else entirely? Now we come to the most controversial part of Picasso's story, and perhaps the most important for understanding not just his legacy, but the entire nature of modern art itself. Pablo Picasso died in 1973, leaving behind a body of work that would be valued in the billions. He's recognized as one of the most influential modern painters of the 20th century, an artist who continuously evolved his styles, much like Igor Stravinsky did in music. But here's the uncomfortable question that art critics and historians continue to grapple with. Did this constant evolution actually devalue his own work? The drive to be different, not just from other artists, but from his own previous creations, was essential for maintaining his status as a modern artist, which in turn helped him sell his artwork. But this relentless cycle of reinvention created an unexpected consequence. It inadvertently led to the devaluation of older modern art, especially when compared to works from earlier, non-modern periods. Think about it. While Picasso's middle period works were initially shocking and impactful, by the end of the 20th century, only a few held significant artistic value outside of their commercial or historical importance. The works that truly endured. His early pieces, the ones that adhered more to traditional representational techniques without relying on shock value as their primary strategy. This raises a fascinating paradox. In his quest to constantly revolutionize art, did Picasso accidentally prove that revolution for its own sake might be artistically self-defeating? There's a broader pattern here that extends beyond Picasso to 20th century modernism as a whole. The movement represented what some critics call an ongoing superficial revolution in the arts, similar to the superficial revolutions seen in Republican governance through electoral systems. It symbolized progress, but often resulted in sustained mediocrity. Unlike artists of previous generations, who built upon the ideas and practices of their predecessors, modernists completely overhauled established traditions. Their aim was to start anew, erasing pre-established norms to create an entirely fresh artistic landscape. But this relentless drive to expel the old resulted in what critics argue was cultural impoverishment, leaving behind what can be seen as the frustrated cry of powerless expression. Here's where it gets really controversial. In today's art world, there exists a dangerous notion that artistic merit correlates directly with market value. The exorbitant prices brought by some works mislead the public into considering them masterpieces simply because they're expensive. This creates a circular logic where price determines value, which determines price ad infinitum. Consider Guernica, undoubtedly a crucial piece for art history and a defining modern work within the academic art canon. But does that inherently qualify it as a great work of art? Or is its value primarily historical and academic? This isn't to diminish its importance, but to question whether we've confused historical significance with aesthetic achievement. Some critics argue that Jackson Pollock might embody modernism in a more quintessential manner than Picasso. But Picasso succeeded in something Pollock never quite achieved, crafting a personal mystique that solidified his reputation as an eminent modern artist. His influence and the persona he cultivated significantly contributed to his lasting legacy within the art world. But here's what makes this debate so fascinating. It brings us back to that napkin story. When Picasso said it took him 60 years to draw that napkin sketch, he wasn't just talking about technical skill. He was talking about the accumulation of experience, the development of vision, the gradual mastery of seeing itself. That kind of mastery can't be faked, can't be manufactured through shock tactics or market manipulation. The question facing us today is whether institutions like academia and museums, which have kept many of Picasso's shock-inducing works prevalent in public consciousness, are preserving genuine artistic achievement or merely sustaining a cultural investment they're too committed to abandon? If not for their intervention, would many of these works have faded from memory decades ago? This isn't about dismissing Picasso. It's about understanding what we mean when we call something a masterpiece. Is it the technical innovation of Cubism? The historical importance of Guernica? The market prices his works command? Or is it something else entirely? Something closer to that moment when an elderly master can create something meaningful on a coffee-stained napkin and know, with 60 years of certainty, exactly what it's worth. The answer might be that Picasso's greatest achievement wasn't any single painting or movement, but rather his demonstration that artistic value exists independent of market forces, critical consensus, or even historical importance. True artistic value lives in that moment of creation itself, in the accumulated wisdom of a lifetime spent learning to see. Before we wrap up Picasso's legacy, if you're craving stories that dig beneath the surface, whether it's art, crime, history, or culture, Scoob is where you want to be. We go beyond the headlines and hype to bring you sharp insights, hidden truths, and perspectives you won't find anywhere else. Download Scoob now on the Play Store and App Store and join thousands of curious minds uncovering what really matters. Now, as we reach the end of our journey through Picasso's extraordinary life, we return to where we began. That cafe, that napkin, that moment of perfect artistic confidence. But now we understand what that confidence really represented. It wasn't arrogance. It was the culmination of a life spent in constant revolution. From the struggling Bohemian with a pistol in Montmartre to the international master commanding astronomical prices for his work, Picasso lived every day as if he were reimagining what art could be. He showed us that true artistic revolution isn't just about breaking rules. It's about understanding them so deeply that you can transcend them. His partnership with Braque didn't just create Cubism. It demonstrated that the greatest innovations emerge from the electric tension between minds, pushing each other toward the impossible. His prints proved that artistic revolution means nothing if it can't reach ordinary people. His love affairs showed us that personal transformation and artistic evolution are inseparable. His political activism, culminating in Guernica, demonstrated that great art doesn't just reflect its time, it shapes how future generations understand that time. And his legacy? It forces us to confront fundamental questions about value, meaning, and the purpose of art itself. Perhaps that's the real genius of Pablo Picasso. He didn't just change how we make art, he changed how we think about what art can do, what it should do, and why it matters. Whether you love his work or question its lasting value, you can't ignore its impact. In the end, maybe that napkin story tells us everything we need to know. Mastery isn't about the 2 minutes it takes to create something. It's about the 60 years it takes to become someone who can create it. And revolution isn't about shocking the world once. It's about spending a lifetime teaching the world new ways to see itself. That's the real legacy of Pablo Picasso. Not just the paintings hanging in museums, but the expanded sense of possibility he left behind. The understanding that art can be political, personal, accessible, and revolutionary all at once. The knowledge that true masters aren't born. They're forged through decades of failure, experimentation, and relentless curiosity. So the next time you see a Picasso, whether it's Guernica in a museum or a print hanging in someone's living room, remember that you're not just looking at a painting. You're witnessing the end result of a 60-year conversation between one man and the entire possibility of human expression. And maybe, just maybe, that's worth $20,000 after all. Thank you for joining me on this journey through the revolutionary life of Pablo Picasso. Until next time, keep questioning, keep creating, and remember, mastery is never about the moment of creation. It's about the lifetime of preparation that makes that moment possible.